Listen to me very carefully. I have a box downstairs that's full of clothes. They need to come up.
Right. A box. I'm looking.
Box. Hey, look at that, I found it!
Bring it upstairs and let me look through. You're smashing it. You're smashing it right now. You're fucking smashing the box, and I told you not.
Anyways, let's get to the point. You guys have been asking me to do a Dead Space video for a little while now, ever since I released the Dead Space 2 video where I talked about what I liked about it and why it's one of my favorite video games, if not my favorite horror game of all time. That being said, there comes a time where you have to shut the fuck up and think, right? Like, sit alone in your room, blare some ridiculously loud music, and think hard about your decisions in life until it keeps you awake after 3 a.m. But some of these thoughts include glimpses of a nostalgic nightmare that to this day is revered, praised, idolized, reinvented, reimagined, remade, and held to a standard that couldn't possibly be touched. Dead Space was the first horror game I ever played. My cousin Cameron came over many years ago, and he had with him a brand new copy of the game. Desperate to see what awaited me, I put that disc in my Xbox 360 and fired that son of a bitch up. I swear, I must have been 10 years old. Fuck me sideways. There's a saying about time and how quick it goes and to cherish what you love the most. Well, this Christmas, I want to give you guys a thorough look at the very first impression of a good horror game we were all given in 2008. If you're a diehard fan of the Dead Space games, you've probably watched the entire documentary series around Glenn Schofield and how all of his amazing and imaginative ideas came to life when making the first game in the series. It's a really cool video, and as much as Callisto Protocol hurt me, I enjoy watching this video just to remember the time that developers actually gave a shit about their games. They didn't deliver something lackluster, they delivered a game that had maximum potential and would fly off of the shelves. I mean, they had to, right? Of course, not every game did at the time, but my point is, how did the love behind making a video game just suddenly go to waste? Anyways, there were a lot of frustratingly bad games this year, but let's end the year with a positive note. I hope you guys enjoy this look at Dead Space. Starting from the beginning, Isaac's descent into the horror begins when the ship discovers the USG Ishimura, a planet cracker that has sent out a distress call. Why the fuck is Isaac moving so slow? I'm not kidding, suddenly it's like the world has just entered slow motion. Yeah, I forgot to mention, for some reason, playing this game on Steam on a modern day PC can cause a lot of issues apparently. Thankfully, there exists an easy manual fix for this if you have Nvidia or AMD. I never quite understood this, to be honest. Why the heck does this happen to older games? I've heard it has something to do with the old games' engines, or perhaps the fact that they're just not designed to be run at such a smooth rate. It's literally a case where your computer is too powerful to run the game. Damn. The first chapter is iconic to fans, as it mostly serves to be the introduction. There's nothing here that will kill an experienced player, and someone like me would say even a baby could get past it, but there's no denying that this first chapter packs a gory punch. The first major task we have is to fix the Tram system, which will allow us to move around the ship easier. Playing after all these years, I really have to appreciate the details they put into making this a genuine horror experience, as the machinery surrounding Isaac is awful sounding, and even the smashing of the broken doors in the distance haunt you. There's lots of encounters with Necromorphs here, but they're the standard type. I have a strategy that has worked flawlessly since this game released. You take one leg out and then the arms or head. This should create some distance between you and those motherfuckers. I also want to talk about Kendra and Hammond, the only other two main characters that survived the attack in the beginning. Kendra is kind of a smart-mouthed, witty, and short-fused partner, but she appears just as in the dark as the rest of us. Although she doesn't physically appear much, we can trust that she is on our side. Hammond is the chief of security for this repair mission, and he wears a stern and cold attitude of authority. As the story progresses, Hammond starts to become positive more and more, and personally I feel like he portrayed a great heroic character. He might have his secrets, but apparently the ship is a giant secret, so, I mean, who cares? It's way too quiet inside the ship, and I honestly don't think this opening would have been as impactful if you weren't on your own. When the door opens, you have to run to the elevator and get the fuck out of there. This is where we pick up the most iconic sidearm in horror game history, the plasma cutter. After, of course, repairing the tram system and fighting off the first few necromorphs, you simply proceed on to Chapter 2 of this hellish journey, where you see just how bad things have gotten. I mean, look at this sick, fucking disgusting lady blindfolded and rubbing a maggot-infested corpse. Gross. This scene is actually pretty funny if you just ignore the lady and watch Isaac admire the fucking kinesis module he just picked up. Moving on, we discover a barricade, and we have to find Thermite in order to get past it to the captain's quarters, where we eventually will have to kill him in order to get his rig. Suddenly, we're introduced to something even worse. These little ugly fuckers are called lurkers, which in essence are necro/baby dog mutant hybrid things that wield 3 long appendages from its back, and they're capable of launching powerful projectiles at Isaac. They're easy to kill, but I never really have the patience to fight these things correctly, so sometimes I'll just mag dump the fucking thing and move on. This is also the same chapter that has the same iconic scene. You know, footage of me after playing the Callisto Protocol. This is also the first 0G segment of the game. Granted, this mechanic wasn't perfected until Dead Space 2 came out, really, because Isaac can't float in the first game. Instead, he must lunge across the terrain at 1 mile per fucking hour until he lands on whatever surface you're aiming for. This is also where we get the Shockpad. That can be combined with the Thermite to fully destroy the barricade and persevere further into the dead ship. Of course, one of the many charming things in Dead Space is its graphic imagery. It's not exactly considered hardcore by today's standards. I mean, I guess that depends on your outlook. But at the time, scenes like this were pretty scary to watch. Subtle hints in the environmental imagery can tell us right away that something big escaped from this pod, and the idea that you don't know what is even better. This is also where we meet the Infector and the Dark Necromorphs. They're much stronger and faster than the usual Necromorphs, and if they get too close to Isaac, you're gonna have a hard time killing them. It's at this point in the story when we realize just how high tensions are. With us being the only ones left and no possible way of getting out in sight, Hammond attempts to lead the group with his authoritative voice. However, Kendra seems suspicious of him. Moving on to Chapter 3, it's all about starting the Ishimura's primary engines. First of all, some stupid fuck cut off the fuel supply, so Isaac has to flip a few switches and get some gas in the tank. Unfortunately, this causes the nearby sleeping Necromorphs to wake up in a pissed-off fit of rage, so you'll be doing a lot of fighting here. You also have to reactivate the gravity centrifuge in order to prevent the ship from falling into Aegis 7's orbit. The centrifuge is a pretty cool part with mixing both combat and high-stress platforming. You'll have to run to the opposite side of the centrifuge, and it's obvious you should take your time here. Thankfully, I just barely dodged this scum fuck who got smushed by the centrifuge. That's what you get, you rotten bastard. This is also the first chapter to introduce us to the drag tentacle. Now, we're all familiar with what it is, and if you're not, I'll summarize. After restarting the centrifuge, Isaac is grabbed by some sort of unknown, monstrously sized appendage, and in order to break free from its grasp, the player has to fight. This ungodly, infamous thing appears 3 times total in the game. In each encounter, you're given a lesser amount of time to defend yourself. This caused younger me to have multiple anxiety attacks at an early age. With the engines on, in Chapter 4, our next vital task is to turn the ADS cannon on manually. We also have a close encounter with the Grim Reaper himself.
By the way, Isaac, be careful. I saw something out there. I don't know what. I only got a glimpse. But it was big. Really big.
This is the toughest enemy yet, the Brute. This goddamn beast is capable of completely fucking your shit up, so giving it a wide berth is mandatory. Since his arms are heavily plated and immune to gunfire, I usually just stasis the shit out of him and creep along his ass. He can't defend his back pussy, so just aim there and you should be fine.
Quarantine lifted. Isaac, make us whole again.
I really only have one thing to say about the incompatible gravity room, and all I gotta say is just watch where you step and you'll make it perfectly fine. If you couldn't already tell, this is also where the player starts to question their sanity. Further along, Isaac has to run through an open asteroid field as it belts the ship like a bunch of snowballs on tempered glass. This part is tricky considering the timing of the asteroids and the constant necromorphs lunging up your ass. I'm almost there. Fuck! Now I'm being tossed around like a fucking ping pong ball. Then we are introduced to one of the hardest moments in the game, operating the ADS cannon. There are 2 instances where you'll be using the cannon, but personally I feel like this one is easier. Asteroids barrel towards the ship at immense speeds, and eventually they start to break into smaller chunks of rock that must be destroyed. It's not really that long of a segment, but it feels like an eternity due to the high stress and anxiety you'll have if the ship gets to a low amount of health. Thankfully I remembered I'm Jesus Christ, and I was able to complete this segment without taking any damage. I'll take my hidden trophy now.
Wait! Isaac Hammond. You're not gonna believe this. Oxygen levels are falling.
Well, with that in mind, we hit Chapter 5, which is when things turn completely upside down. The entire area looks sabotaged, almost as if someone was setting us up to die within the cold confines of the ship.
Personal log, Dr. Charles Mercer. I now have a live subject for my study. I'm eager to validate my tissue regeneration theory. Initial restraint was problematic, but now the patient's resting comfortably. He trusts me, Dr. Kind. He puts his life in my hands. He knows his part in all of this. Understands what I'm doing. Now attempting to create a passage to insert the sample tissue into...
Just then, we meet a Dr. Chalice Mercer, a radical unitologist who has murdered others for the sake of spreading the Necromorph plague. Mercer is an okay villain, often giving boisterous speeches and extravagant divine intimacy towards Isaac, stating that it's humanity's final call, and that all Necromorphs must take over and be the children of the apocalypse, or whatever bullshit. A second later, we're introduced to the Hunter for the very first time in the series. In the sequel, his name was changed to the Ubermorph. Upon my first encounter, I was terrified of this thing. He's so fast, and he can devastate Isaac if you let him get too close. As I mentioned in the Dead Space 2 video, stasis is your best friend here, at least until you have to burn the Hunter using the cargo ship's ignition test later on. This chapter is all about constructing the poison that you'll need to take on the Leviathan later on. The entire time you're running around, Isaac is harassed by both Mercer and his perfect puppet that can't be killed. It adds a lot of tension to the already terrifying sequence, and the plethora of enemies here doesn't help at all. With all of the doors locked, you're forced to fend off as much as you can until Kendra helps you. There's also this weird thing I'm only just now noticing. This creepy woman standing in the corner, covered in blood, laughing or crying to herself. It's bizarre, and I can't believe I never noticed it when I was younger. At the end of this chapter, we are once again tossed into a 1v1 with the Hunter. All you have to do is cripple him inside the cryogenic freezer, run into the office, and then freeze him using the console. If I had known this part was that easy as a kid, it would have changed my entire outlook. Also, small little detail that I noticed, I really like how the Hunter sharpened his claws when he saw Isaac. Really cool detail. Now, the plot revolves around cleaning the air, since oxygen levels are falling at immense speeds. Personally, this chapter really slows the gameplay in my opinion. I hate the fact that I just have to run and jump all over the fucking place to find these Weezer things that emit some sort of toxic cloud. It kind of feels repetitive to me, and I hate doing this part of the game. After clearing the Weezers and other headaches, Isaac uses the poison constructed in the previous chapter to destroy the Leviathan, but it's not powerful enough on its own, of course. This leads to Isaac having to go inside and fight it himself. This boss battle is easy so long as you pay attention to where it swings its arms and constantly keep your feet moving. After the big sack of shit is left for dead, you can then exit the tram to the next chapter.
This may be our last chance of getting out of here alive, Isaac. There's an asteroid loaded up in the mining bay waiting to be smelted. If you attach the SOS Beacon to it, you can launch it away from the ship to make a clean broadcast.
Another complaint of mine is the amount of times you have to move shit with your kinesis module. On top of that, you have to fight a bunch of assholes too. I'm also not a huge fan of any of the scripted segments where you're stuck in one spot and have to tirelessly kill the same enemy over and over again. Thankfully, this process isn't repeated too often, but here you have to be on the defensive 3 times in a row. It's kinda overkill to me. This chapter is all about sending a message, specifically a message that involves destroying the gravity tethers that are holding the asteroid in place so that you can place an SOS beacon on top of it in order to get word out to the outside world that, hey, we need help and we're stuck here. When all is said and done, the asteroid goes bye-bye out the window, but Kendra warns us that the signal is still being blocked by a fleshy overgrowth.
Things are looking up. A military ship just shocked in, the USM Valor. I don't know what it was doing out there. It must have gotten our distress signal.
Pushing into the next chapter, we must now make contact with the USM Valor, a military gunship. This requires us to fix a solar array in order to receive calls from them. Although Isaac arranges the dishes in perfect order, the signal is still being blocked by that giant overgrowth, so it's back to the fucking cannon for the second and final time. This boss fight is called the Slug, and it's way harder than the first cannon segment. I struggled for a long time as a kid on this part, and I think it's mostly because I had no idea what I was doing wrong to die so many times. I can sum it up by saying focus on one tentacle at a time on the Slug, and you should be okay. They like to chuck all sorts of garbage at Isaac, but their attacks can be avoided if you shoot them the second before they throw. This is also where we witness the USM Valor crash into the Ishimura, where Hammond returns with an interesting message.
Wish I could just talk to someone. It's all falling apart here.
Isaac. Isaac, are you there? Thank God you're alright. I've been trying to reach you. Someone's been blocking my rig signal remotely. A crash must have interrupted the signal block.
I say it's interesting because Hammond mentions that someone was remotely blocking his rig signal. It took me a while to realize it, but I'm pretty sure Kendra is the culprit. I'll explain later on. Hammond changes his mind on the mission and says the best course of option is to leave. Gee, only took 7 fucking chapters to realize that. Next up on the to-do list, board the USM Valor and steal the Singularity Core for use in the cargo ship. Won't be easy, however, since we have yet another new enemy waiting for us inside. These fast-paced fucking nightmares are called Twitchers, and their specialty is, well, they twitch. They can dodge your bullets a lot easier and faster, and they're hell of a lot stronger too. Twitchers, for some reason, didn't appear again in Dead Space 2. It wasn't until Dead Space 3 came out that they decided to throw them in again, which is totally fine by me. They add a lot of positive stress to the gameplay in that game. I really love how every introduction to a new enemy in the Dead Space universe is done in a cinematic and unique way. It really shows you that they actually gave a shit about their characters. Oh great, it's Dr. Kyne. Every fan of the game already knows who he is, but this is the first we hear from him directly. He says that we must return the marker to its home world or else all of humanity is damned to die to the Necromorphs. But before we can save humanity, we have to get the Singularity Core. You do this by slowly working your way up using the Kinesis module to move this big fucking thing, and then you shoot the fuses that are right off to the side. Do this on both sides and you're gold to grab the Singularity Core. Unfortunately, it's also here that Hammond gets turned into brute bait. Rest in pieces, soldier. After getting our revenge for what happened to Hammond, it's about time we start prepping to get the fuck out of here. Chapter 10 is when shit really starts to hit the fan for the game. Mercer has come back, and this time his reign of terror has spread in the most horrific way. The man he has captured, Jacob Temple, is an important character that leaves audio logs behind, leaving me to believe that him and Isaac were not so far apart in terms of the story. Unfortunately, he met an unruly end.
Witness the conviction of a true believer! They are ready. Take them. Embrace them.
It's here that we are introduced to Dr. Kyne, one of the many men responsible for this whole thing. Seemingly insane, he asks for Isaac's help in recovering the marker and escorting it back to the planet via cargo ship. This is a long chapter with lots of talking and exposition and fighting and... Jesus, it's a lot. First, you have to find the crew key in order to access the areas where the 3 nav cards are located. During this run, the Hunter comes back to haunt Isaac and kill him for good. It's a very stressful chapter that makes you consider your resources heavily, and if you're not paying attention, you could easily get cornered. Then you have this one stupid part where Kyne trips balls for like 10 minutes talking about the marker, but then he shows you the Hive mind, which is, of course, to everybody's knowledge, the final boss fight. After collecting all 3 of the nav cards, the hunter arrives for one last coup de grace. It's a final fight between man and mutant, and it actually has a climactic ending. Isaac must cripple the hunter while it's behind the cargo ship's ignition pipe, then race to the office and test fire the shuttle, melting that crooked son of a bitch once and for all. He lets out one last blood-curdling screech before falling to pieces. Not gonna miss you, asshole. Kyne returns and takes the shuttle to the flight deck to prepare to go to the surface. Mercer also, for some reason, kind of just kills himself by allowing an infector to suck him off, so that's one less loose end. Chapter 11 revolves around moving the marker to and fro. What? Whoa. What the fuck is this thing? Okay, I've never seen a Necromorph come after me with no arms before. Can it still do damage? Huh. This is kind of weird. Ah, okay, yeah, it still hurts me, you fucking asshole. Anyways, this chapter focuses on moving the marker to the cargo hold of the ship. Since there's apparently no way for Kyne to do all of this bullshit, it's once again up to Isaac. After you load up the marker and run to freedom, suddenly Kyne is shot. Oh no. Please don't die, Kyne.
Sorry, Isaac.
Yep. The very first betrayal I ever felt in a video game was Kendra. It's not a bad twist, actually, considering how well she played the part. This is why I believe that it was her who was responsible for blocking Hammond's rig signal earlier in the game, because it makes sense that she wouldn't want anyone else to make it out alive and live to tell the story of what a massacre this whole thing turned out to be. Science can truly be scary, and money rules all. The fact that she knew about the marker the entire time makes playing the game over and over again a lot more chilling. You might have noticed throughout the whole course of this video, I haven't really complained that much, and that's because there's really nothing to complain about. The game has a contagious style and infectious mechanics and an amazing storyline that keeps everybody invested every time they play. I enjoy every single second I spend when I dive back into the game. Except for this part. Let me explain. Most people love the enemy gauntlets in Dead Space, and sometimes I can be one of them depending on the situation. However, here, I feel like it was intentionally made so you can't possibly run right through and get to the end. Instead, Isaac is forced to drag the marker all over the fucking place and fight off hundreds of Necromorphs at the same time. There are 3 total areas in which enemies will attack you, but once you finally get past it, nothing feels better. Oh, shit. Gotta watch my back. Unfortunately, Kendra catches up to us and gets to the marker first. She then forces us to watch a video of our now ex-girlfriend. It's heart-wrenching. I mean, the imagery here is just shocking. I mean, I'm saying that as a joke, but in all seriousness, this is a genuinely well-done scene. Even though Isaac doesn't say a single word the whole game, we can tell that obviously the whole goal at the end of the game is to save Nicole, and this whole time, she's been dead? What a fucking blow. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, the greatest cutscene I've ever seen in my entire fucking life.
Oh my god.
It's no secret to any Dead Space fan that the Hive Mind boss battle is one of the best, and the enormous size of the creature is overwhelming. I like how Isaac does this little shoulder shrug, almost as if to say, let's fucking do this. I've been through everything at this point. It's time to put an end to this shit. The Hive Mind, in my opinion, is probably one of the greatest boss battles I have ever seen in my entire life. There's something about being the size of an ant and causing irreparable harm to an organism so giant and alien-like in nature that it really makes the game a fucking masterpiece. After you destroy 4 of the 6 pustules on its face, the Hive Mind grabs Isaac, holding him well over OSHA levels of what's considered safe altitude. While dangling, Isaac has to shoot the other 2 eyes before it's too late. It's a fucking epic scene. Stop moving! Fuck, come on. Jesus Christ. I fucking hate that part. After he drops you, Isaac is then directed towards his chest cavity where there's 5 more pustules awaiting to be popped. After these are popped, it's fucking game over. The hive mind is dead. Isaac desperately runs for the cargo ship. At this point, as a kid, I was at the edge of my fucking seat. I really wanted Isaac to make it out alive, and I was really excited to see how it was going to play out for him. So, he makes it, as any noble hero would. The game allows you some time to reflect on all that you've just been through, giving you a much-needed relief. And that's my experience with the first Dead Space. Isaac Clarke will always be an icon in the survival horror genre, and I think it's safe to say that the remake is all I need to relive the haunting memories of the past once again.
I wish I could talk to you. I'm sorry.
Alright, it's that time of the video where I beg and plead for you guys to like and subscribe for more content. If you're feeling dangerous, you can hit that bell too to get notifications the second we upload a video. It really helps us out, and thanks a lot for the support, guys.